Mr. Agarwal, for you to look at how supply chains are changing in India, what is it that we need to take this forward, and how does this contribute to the growth and the development of India as a power?
I think it's a well-known fact that today India needs to integrate globally with global supply chains, not just from a China plus one strategy, but the fact that India's own resilience will come from the fact that we are able to develop these supply chains. Take the example of pharmaceuticals, where we are still dependent on a lot of APIs from China. Take the example of chemicals, where we are again dependent on APIs from China. And of course, a lot of manufacturing equipment. We're talking about a semiconductor policy, but most of the equipment is all going to come from overseas. The phones that are being made in India that we are very proud of, 94% of those components are imported. So to really build resilience in supply chain, the current way of that we are doing, the things that we are doing are in the right direction. So essentially building accesses of cooperation in various areas. The first and the most important has been military. So with the Quad that got set up, that is something that is going to help us. Political, the three I's, that is also going to help us. And more importantly, the economic. So the economic, where we are making the FTAs or the EFTAs, etc. Those are things that are going to give us more resilience. We need to do more of that. We need to add more such economic accesses where we get more and more different countries that we want to partner with as part of that access, so that we are able to then control the supply chains that we want to. The world is also looking to India for imports. They want India to really supply to the world as well. But we have to build this resilience. Simultaneously, other than the military, the political, the economic, the other aspect is the social accesses. Some of those social accesses of power need to be also controlled by India. Otherwise, we will not be able to influence countries where we want to align with. Clearly, supply chains today, and this is not anecdotal, but when I speak to a lot of companies, are actually in stress because they are heavily dependent on imports. And this needs to really change. So for India has to build up these different accesses to really move to the next dimension.
Thank you. My next question to you in the next round will be the hows. Vineet, you spoke about how the Quad and other such arrangements, especially on the resilience in supply chains, and how the Quad makes it easier for India to be more resilient. Can you elaborate on that for us on the ground? What does it look like on the ground? I mean, we've read about it, but honestly, for most Indians, it's a mystery.
Well, it's also a mystery to me, to many specifically, but broadly, I think, in geopolitics, they say that if you're not on the table, then you're on the menu, right? So it's important that India's voice has to be heard. And India's voice can be heard in places like the G7, where we are not a part of, the Security Council, where we are not a part of, and many such areas. But the way for India's voice to be heard cannot be by flexing its muscle like China has done, not by overestimation of its own power, and then try to dominate the economic scenarios that we are trying to create. So it has to be done through these specific alliances and accesses, and then ultimately that voice gets to be heard. So on ground, a few things that we have seen that, and Ambassador talked about those, the level of cooperation that is increased at the military level is just phenomenal. There are several companies that we work with today on the defense side that are now not just importing the technology, but actually preparing items for export. And they are setting up bases in different countries for export to those countries. And we are part of some of those supply chains where we are facilitating some of the logistics. But it is on the ground, it has made a massive change. We know, for example, the work that has happened with Israel, the kind of technology that we received on several other surveillance-related technologies. So, as I said, I'm not privy to those, but I'm just saying what we've seen on the ground. And all of this has to be factored in that if our voice has to be heard, it cannot be through hard hitting stuff. It has to be a little bit more softer. Maybe we have to take a doctrine of peace, a doctrine of more multilateral cooperation.
Interesting.